I froze mid-step, my hand still on the kitchen counter, the mug I'd been holding rattling with the tremor of disbelief. My daughter's words cut sharper than any knife I'd ever held. "You're not my real dad!" The syllables hung in the air, thick and heavy, suffocating the hum of the fridge, the ticking of the wall clock, even the distant traffic outside. Her mother's knees buckled first. I didn't see it coming. 1 second she was standing there, eyes wide, mouth open, and the next she collapsed onto the floor with a soft thud. The smell of faint perfume mingled with the faint tang of spilled coffee. Everyone's gaze locked on me. My heartbeat thumped in my ears, loud enough to drown out any rational thought. I took a shaky breath, trying to process the chaos, my eyes on my daughter. She wasn't small anymore. At 13, she had the weight of conviction in her stance, the fire in her eyes. And yet, the way her lip trembled betrayed the vulnerability beneath the bravado. I felt anger rising first, quick and bitter, then a deeper, raw ache. This wasn't just a remark. It was a declaration. And yet, part of me understood. Maybe I had failed her in ways I hadn't even noticed. Maybe the truth she'd just flung at me had been simmering in the shadows, waiting to explode. I knelt beside her mother, checking for signs of consciousness while keeping one wary eye on my daughter. Her mother's fingers twitched. That was a start. Relief mingled with dread because I knew this was far from over. When she stirred, the room felt smaller, tighter, every second stretching like a taut rope. My daughter crossed her arms, the echo of her words still cutting through the air. I could feel the weight of the silence, a heavy blanket smothering everything familiar, and somewhere deep inside, a quiet, stubborn resolve began to rise. I would face this. I would find the truth, and I would not let this break what we had. But first, I had to survive the storm in the room. The kitchen smelled of coffee and tension, a heavy, bitter mix that clung to my clothes. My daughter sat on the edge of the counter, legs swinging, eyes fixed on the tile floor, refusing to meet mine. Her arms were crossed so tight I thought they might snap. "Look," I started, my voice steady but low. "I know what you just said. It hurts. But you're my daughter. No DNA test or secret past can change that." She snorted, the sound sharp, mocking. "You don't get it. You're not my real dad. You'll never be my real dad." Her voice cracked, and I realized she was trying to make me angry. But fear was creeping in behind her bravado. I took a deep breath, kneeling down so I was at her eye level. I could feel her tension, taste the bitter tang of rebellion in the air, hear the way the house seemed to hold its breath. "I don't need to be real on paper," I said quietly. "I'm here. I've been here. I've never left." Her mother was on the floor, slowly sitting up, hands pressed to her chest. She whispered something I didn't fully catch, but her eyes said it all. "This isn't just a fight between him and me. It's bigger than that." I looked back at my daughter. "I don't know everything that's happened. Maybe there are things I don't understand, but I will figure it out with you. I will be your dad in every way that matters. You just have to let me." For a moment, nothing moved. The silence stretched, thick and unbearable. And then, a single tear slid down her cheek. It wasn't a surrender. It was a crack. And in that crack, I felt the first hint of hope. I reached out, my hand hovering just above hers. She didn't pull away. Not yet. Not completely. And in that fragile second, I realized that battles like this weren't won with shouting or anger. They were won with patience, presence, and the stubborn refusal to walk away. The storm wasn't over, not by a long shot, but maybe, just maybe, we could weather it together. The house felt different after that morning. Every corner seemed to hum with a quiet tension, the kind that made the walls feel too close and the air too heavy. I sat at the dining table staring at my coffee, but the warmth of the mug did little to calm the storm inside me. My daughter had retreated to her room, slamming the door with a force that rattled the frame. I could hear muffled sobs through the wood. Her mother moved around in a haze, her every step cautious, like she was afraid the next word might shatter what little calm remained. I ran my hand through my hair, tasting the bitterness of coffee and fear. How had we gotten here? I'd been her dad for years, or at least I had thought so. Every scraped knee I bandaged, every late-night talk, every laugh we shared felt suddenly fragile, hanging by a thread. And now, with a single sentence, everything had tilted. I finally stood and walked down the hall to my daughter's room. I knocked softly, almost apologetically. "Can we talk?" I said. My voice cracked slightly, betraying the storm behind my calm. "Go away," she said, her voice sharp but shaky. "Just leave me alone." I hesitated. I knew she wanted distance, wanted to protect herself, but I couldn't. Not this time. I opened the door slowly, letting the faint light from the hallway spill into her room. She was sitting cross-legged on the floor, knees drawn up, a small quilt clutched around her shoulders. Her eyes were red, glistening with unshed tears. "Look," I said, lowering myself to sit on the floor a few feet from her, careful not to invade her space. "I don't know what made you say that. I don't know if someone told you something, or if you've been feeling this for a long time, but I need you to know, no matter what, I'm here. I've always been here." She didn't answer. She just stared at a spot on the carpet, small fingers twisting the quilt. I could hear her shallow breaths, smell the faint scent of lavender from the lotion she always used. I remembered the first time she'd let me braid her hair, the way her small hands had felt in mine, how proud she had been to show it off at school. And I thought, I can't lose that. Not to a word, not to doubt, not to fear. "I'm not going anywhere," I continued. "You're my daughter. I've raised you. I've fought for you. I've loved you in ways that matter. And I know you're scared. I know you're angry. But you're not alone in this." Finally, her gaze lifted. Her lips trembled as she tried to form words, but nothing came out. I could see the wall of anger she had built around herself starting to crack. It was a fragile thing, but it was there, a door ajar, and I had to be careful. I had to step gently or it would slam shut again. Her mother's voice floated from the hallway, soft and shaky. I need to know the truth too." That caught both our attention. My daughter's head jerked toward the door, eyes wide, the quilt dropping slightly. I swallowed hard, realizing the full weight of the moment. The truth wasn't just between me and her. It was bigger. It had been buried, unspoken, shaping every decision we'd made as a family. And now, it demanded to be faced. I took a deep breath, tasting the bitterness in my mouth and feeling the tension tighten in my chest. "Tomorrow," I said, my voice firm but gentle, "we'll talk. All of us. No more secrets. No more pretending. We face it together, and whatever the truth is, we survive it. Because we're a family." She didn't speak, but her hands relaxed slightly, the quilt slipping off her shoulders. Her mother leaned against the doorframe, fragile but present. For the first time since the explosion of that morning, there was a pause in the chaos, a quiet acknowledgement that we were still standing. But I knew tomorrow would change everything, and when it did, there would be no turning back. The morning sun filtered through the blinds, casting thin stripes of light across the kitchen floor. It should have felt ordinary, but nothing about that house was ordinary anymore. I could feel it in the stiff set of my shoulders, the tight ache behind my eyes, the way my stomach churned like I was about to step into a battlefield. I found my daughter at the table, her small fingers tracing the rim of a cereal bowl she wasn't eating. Her eyes were red, the remnants of tears still clinging to her lashes. Her mother sat across from her, silent, a tremor running through her hands as they rested on her knees. I inhaled, tasting the metallic tang of tension in the air. "All right," I said, letting my voice fill the quiet, careful not to break. "We need to talk, all of us. No lies, no hiding. We face this together." My daughter's head shot up, and I could see the war inside her, the anger, the confusion, the longing to push away but also to understand. "Why?" she whispered. "Why now? Why tell me like this?" I felt my chest tighten. I had no choice but to meet her gaze. "Because hiding it has only made things worse. You deserve the truth, and you deserve to know I'm here, no matter what." Her mother's voice wavered. I thought I was protecting you. I thought keeping it secret would make things easier. I didn't know it would hurt this much." Her hands shook as she tried to fold them neatly, but the tremor betrayed her fear. I knelt beside my daughter, letting her see the steadiness in my posture, the sincerity in my eyes. "Listen," I said slowly, each word deliberate. "The truth is complicated. It doesn't change the time we've spent together. It doesn't erase the nights I stayed up when you were sick, the games we played, the talks we had. But it's time you know everything. All of it." Her eyes narrowed, and I could feel the storm inside her, the fierce pride that refused to bow to anyone, not even me. "All of it?" she said, her voice a mix of challenge and fear. "Even the part about him?" I swallowed hard. Her question pierced deeper than I expected. "Yes," I said, my voice steady despite the weight pressing on me. "Everything. I want you to understand why things happened the way they did. And I want you to know that my love for you, it's never depended on anything but you being you." A heavy silence filled the room. I could hear my daughter's shallow breaths, the ticking of the clock on the wall, the soft hum of the fridge, every sound amplified in the tension. And then, slowly, she lowered her gaze, letting the reality sink in. The fire in her eyes softened, replaced by a flicker of uncertainty. Her mother reached out, fingers brushing her daughter's arm. It was tentative, careful, like testing fragile ice. "I'm sorry," she whispered, "for keeping secrets, for letting you feel alone." I placed a hand over theirs, the warmth of skin against skin grounding us, reminding us that no matter the truths that would come, we were still a family. "We face this together," I repeated. "Whatever comes next, we survive it as a unit, and we rebuild." For the first time in days, the room felt still, not empty, not broken, but suspended. Like the quiet before a storm breaks, or the calm after the first wave passes. I didn't know how long this moment would last, but I knew it mattered. Tomorrow, the revelations would continue. The truths would hit harder, the conflicts deeper. But today, we had paused, breathed, and reminded ourselves we were still here. And being here meant we still had a chance to fight, to heal, and to reclaim what had been threatened by a single devastating sentence. And deep down, I knew, whatever else happened, I would not let her doubt the love that had never wavered, the love that had always been real. The afternoon sunlight spilled across the living room, painting golden streaks on the carpet. I sat on the couch, hands clasped tightly together, waiting. My daughter was across the room, curled up on the floor with her knees pressed to her chest, and her mother hovered near the doorway, her face pale, her eyes rimmed with exhaustion and fear. It was time to confront the truth, the thing that had festered in silence until it exploded in the kitchen that morning. I swallowed, feeling the bitter taste of nerves in my mouth. This wasn't just about her words. It was about the secret her mother had kept for years, a secret that had shaped every moment of our family life. "All right," I began, my voice low but steady. "You've been carrying questions for a long time, haven't you?" Her mother flinched. My daughter looked up, eyes wide, fragile but sharp, like a spark threatening to ignite a storm. "I think you know some of it," I continued, letting the words roll slowly, giving them weight. "And I think it's time you hear the rest. Not from rumors, not from whispers, but from us. The truth." Her mother shook her head slightly, voice barely above a whisper. I thought I was protecting her." I didn't interrupt. I had learned long ago that rushing someone through fear never worked. Instead, I let the silence stretch for a heartbeat longer. The air was thick, electric with anticipation, and I could smell the faint scent of vanilla from a candle we had lit days ago. The smell should have been comforting, but right now it felt foreign, almost out of place. I looked at my daughter. "You asked me this morning if I was your real dad. The truth is complicated. I'm not your biological father, but I am your father in every way that matters. I've been here for you every day, through every scraped knee, every laugh, every tear." Her eyes filled with tears, her lip trembling. "So, it's true?" she whispered. "You're not real?" I shook my head gently. "Real isn't what matters. Love matters. Presence matters. You didn't lose me the moment you learned the truth, and you never will, unless you let go." Her mother moved closer, kneeling beside her. "I should have told you sooner," she admitted, her voice raw. "I wanted to protect you. I didn't know it would hurt this much. I didn't know it would make you question everything." I placed a hand on my daughter's shoulder, feeling the tension, the tremor in her small body. "I know it's a lot, and it's okay to be angry. It's okay to feel betrayed. But nothing changes what we are to each other. We're a family. That's the truth you can hold on to. She looked between us, eyes wide, tears streaming freely now. The anger she had worn like armor that morning had softened, replaced by confusion and fear, but also a glimmer of understanding. It was fragile, yes, but it was there. "I don't know if I can forgive this yet," she admitted, voice small, vulnerable. "It feels wrong." "I don't expect you to understand everything immediately," I said, voice firm but gentle. "I just need you to know we're not going anywhere. And eventually you'll see that love, our love, is stronger than any secret, stronger than any truth that shakes us." She leaned into her mother's side, and for a moment the room felt lighter, though still fragile. We were on the edge, teetering between chaos and healing. And I knew deep down that this was only the beginning, the first step toward mending the fracture in our family. Tomorrow the real tests would come: trust, forgiveness, and the slow rebuilding of bonds shaken to the core. But today, for the first time since that morning, we had a glimpse of hope. That evening, the house felt quieter than it had in days. The tension that had filled every corner earlier was still present, but now it carried a different weight, a cautious, fragile hope. My daughter sat on the living room floor, a notebook open in front of her, doodles and scribbles scattered across the pages. She wasn't speaking much, but her presence was a small victory. She hadn't fled to her room. She hadn't slammed the door. That was progress. I settled into the armchair across from her, the worn leather creaking under my weight. I could smell the faint residue of crayons and pencil shavings, the air thick with the scent of her sweat, and the faint sweetness of her hair care products. She glanced up at me once, then quickly returned to her notebook, scribbling furiously. "What you drawing?" I asked, keeping my tone light, careful not to push too hard. She shrugged, a small defiant movement. "Nothing." I nodded, pretending to accept it, but I kept my eyes on her. There was something in her gaze, a flicker of thoughtfulness, maybe even curiosity beneath the storm of hurt. I had to be patient. Trust wasn't rebuilt in a day. It was earned, slowly, step by step. Her mother appeared in the doorway holding 2 mugs of cocoa. The smell of chocolate and cinnamon filled the room. "You two need a break," she said softly, setting the mugs down on the coffee table. "Just talk, sit, be here." My daughter hesitated, then took the mug I offered, her small fingers brushing mine. That brief contact, almost accidental, sent a jolt of hope through me. A single touch, a tiny bridge being built over the gap between anger and trust. We sat in silence for a moment, sipping the warm cocoa, listening to the quiet hum of the refrigerator and the occasional creak of the floorboards. Then she spoke, her voice low and tentative. "I don't get it," she admitted. "How can you still be my dad if you're not? Doesn't that, I don't know, make it fake?" I leaned forward, resting my elbows on my knees. "It's not fake," I said gently. "Love isn't about biology. It's about showing up, being there, protecting, guiding, laughing, crying together. I've done all that with you and I'll keep doing it. That's what makes me your dad, every single day." She looked down at her mug, swirling the cocoa with her finger. I could see her mind turning, wrestling with the idea, testing it, weighing it. Finally, she whispered, "But it hurts, knowing you're not like them." "I know," I said quietly, "and it's okay to hurt. It's okay to be confused, angry, even scared. Those feelings don't mean you don't love me. They just mean you're human." Her eyes lifted, searching mine. There was a flicker of something, recognition maybe, or the faintest glimmer of understanding. She didn't smile, not yet, but the rigidity in her posture softened. Her mother joined in, kneeling beside her. "We can't change the past," she said gently, "but we can decide how we move forward, together." For the first time in days, my daughter didn't pull away. She leaned slightly toward her mother, then toward me, a quiet willingness to be part of something still intact. I could feel the tension in my chest ease, just a fraction, like the first exhale after holding your breath for too long. Tonight wouldn't fix everything. Tomorrow would still bring questions, doubts, maybe even tears. But tonight, we had taken a step. A small one, a fragile one, but it was ours. And for the first time in days, I felt like we might survive this, together. The next morning arrived heavy and gray, the sky overcast, matching the uncertainty in my chest. I could feel it before I even stepped outside, the weight of unspoken questions, the tension hanging over the house like a low-hanging storm cloud. I sipped my coffee slowly, savoring the warmth, the faint bitterness grounding me. Today, nothing would be easy. My daughter lingered in the kitchen doorway, clutching her backpack strap like a lifeline. She didn't say good morning. She didn't meet my eyes. The silence was loud, almost suffocating. Her mother hovered nearby, wringing her hands, the anxiety radiating off her in waves. "I'm walking you to school," I said, keeping my tone calm, steady. I needed her to feel my presence without pressure, without judgment. She shook her head. "I can go by myself." I studied her, recognizing the stubborn streak I knew so well, but also the flicker of vulnerability beneath it. "I know you can," I said gently, "but I want to be there, just today. Then you can take the world on your own." Reluctantly, she nodded, not looking at me, and we stepped outside. The air was cool and damp, carrying the faint scent of rain and asphalt. We walked in silence, the crunch of gravel underfoot, and the distant roar of traffic filling the spaces between us. Finally, I broke the quiet. "Yesterday was hard. I know it was, but I also know something else." I glanced at her, careful to keep my tone light but firm. "I'm not going anywhere, and I'm still your dad. Every single day, no matter what." She didn't answer, but her fingers tightened briefly on her backpack strap. That small movement told me she was listening, even if she didn't want to admit it. When we arrived at school, the noise of students, shouting and laughing, hit us like a wave. I could feel her hesitation, the tension coiling in her shoulders. Some of her classmates passed by, glancing curiously at the pair of us. I sensed the unspoken judgments, the whispers she would have to navigate today. "Hey," I said softly, crouching to her level. "Whatever happens today, whatever people say, you know who we are, right? You know we're a team." She looked at me, eyes briefly meeting mine. A flicker of understanding crossed her face, mingled with defiance. "Yeah," she said quietly, almost inaudible over the noise. "I know." That small acknowledgement felt like a victory, but I could see the storm still brewing behind her eyes. Today would test her, test us. Friends, classmates, even teachers might unintentionally poke at the fragile cracks in our story. And I knew that no matter how carefully we'd prepared, it would hurt. I straightened up, placing a hand briefly on her shoulder. "I'll be here after school," I said. "We talk, we figure things out, we survive it together." She nodded, slipping into the flow of students, disappearing into the crowd, but not before a small, almost imperceptible glance back at me. That glance said more than words ever could. She wasn't ready to forgive fully, but she was willing to try. As I watched her merge with the sea of kids, I felt the tension in my shoulders ease slightly. The battle wasn't over. The war wasn't won. But the first test of trust had begun, and she had survived it. That small victory was enough to keep hope alive. I turned back toward the car, the damp air smelling faintly of earth and rain, and I thought about what the afternoon would bring. More questions, more anger, maybe even tears, but also maybe the first steps toward rebuilding a bond that had been shaken to its core. And for the first time in a long time, I felt like we might just make it through, together. The afternoon sun had a weak, washed-out glow as I pulled into the school parking lot. I could see my daughter exiting the building, her posture stiff, shoulders hunched like she was carrying the weight of the morning on them. Even from a distance, I could sense the storm inside her, anger, confusion, fear, all swirling beneath a fragile layer of composure. As she walked toward the car, a group of her classmates clustered nearby, laughing and joking. I noticed a boy she sometimes called a friend glance at her, his smirk turning into something sharper as he noticed my presence. I could feel the tension in the air, the faint crackle of judgment aimed at both of us. She slid into the passenger seat without a word. I started the engine slowly, listening to the hum of the tires on asphalt. I resisted the urge to lecture her immediately. She needed space. She needed me to be steady, calm, present. The quiet car smelled faintly of her shampoo, mixed with the lingering hint of cinnamon gum she always carried in her backpack. It was a familiar scent, grounding in a world that had suddenly shifted beneath our feet. Finally, I broke the silence. "Rough day?" I asked, careful not to sound accusatory. Her jaw tightened. "You could say that," she muttered, eyes fixed on the passing scenery outside the window. I nodded, taking a deep breath. I knew she'd faced whispers, sidelong glances, questions she wasn't ready to answer. School was a minefield, and I could feel her tension radiating across the seat between us. "Want to talk about it?" I asked softly. "No," she said flatly. Her tone wasn't defiant this time. It was weary, exhausted, like the words had already drained from her. I resisted the urge to push. Instead, I let the car hum along, the tires rolling over the asphalt with a soothing rhythm. I knew that even without words, our presence together mattered. She was still my daughter. She was still learning, still struggling, still human. After a few blocks of silence, she finally spoke, her voice small but charged with emotion. "It's not just you being my dad or not. Everyone knows something's different. And now they have questions. And I hate feeling different. I hate feeling like I'm not enough." Her words hit me like a punch to the chest. I swallowed the lump in my throat and reached out, placing my hand over hers. Her skin was warm, trembling slightly, and the contact sent a jolt of determination through me. "You are enough," I said firmly. "More than enough. Being your dad has nothing to do with who made you. It has everything to do with how I've been here for you. Every day, every scrape, every laugh, every night I stayed up when you were sick. That's what makes me your dad. That's what makes you my daughter." She looked down at our hands, eyes glistening, fighting the tears she didn't want to shed. "But what if I want someone else to be my dad? A real one?" I took a deep breath, the weight of the question pressing on me. "Then I'll feel hurt," I admitted honestly. "I won't lie, but I will also understand, and I will still be here. Because love doesn't vanish just because life isn't perfect. Life isn't perfect, but our bond, that's real, and it's unshakable." Her mother's words from the other morning echoed in my mind. We can't change the past, but we can decide how we move forward. I knew that day, today, was a test of that very principle. We drove on in silence again, the hum of the tires and the distant murmur of traffic filling the spaces between us. It was comfortable in a way. Two people holding on to fragile hope without forcing it, giving each other room to breathe, to think, to feel. When we pulled into the driveway, I could see the neighbors' kids playing outside, their laughter a distant echo. My daughter exhaled sharply, as if releasing a fraction of the tension she'd been carrying all day. I turned off the engine and waited. Do you think I'll ever feel normal again?" she asked quietly, almost afraid of her own words. I reached over, brushing a loose strand of hair from her forehead. "Normal isn't the point," I said softly. "We create our own normal. It's messy, it's complicated, but it's ours. And every day, we build it together. That's what matters." She nodded slowly, a small movement, but significant. The first crack of reconciliation had formed, tiny but undeniable, and I knew that the journey ahead would still be rocky. Questions, doubts, external pressures. But this small step mattered. We walked into the house together, the faint smell of dinner simmering in the kitchen. The world outside still carried its judgments and whispers, but inside these walls, we had a fragile truce, one that would need nurturing, patience, and unshakable presence. But for the first time in days, I allowed myself to believe that we might just survive this storm, together. And deep down, I knew tomorrow would bring new challenges, but it would also bring opportunities to prove that love, above all else, could weather even the hardest truths. The next morning arrived with the faint hum of tension already in the air. I had barely opened my eyes when I heard the creak of my daughter's door. She wasn't supposed to be up yet. The house still smelled of last night's cocoa, mingling with the faint scent of laundry detergent from the day before. I rubbed my eyes and stretched, listening as she moved quietly down the hall. By the time I reached the kitchen, she was sitting at the table staring at a folded piece of paper, her fingers drumming lightly against the wood. Her mother stood behind her, hesitant, eyes flicking between us as though she was expecting a storm. "What's that?" I asked gently, keeping my voice low. She hesitated, then pushed the paper toward me. It's a note. I found it in my locker at school. Someone wrote it. About you. About us. Her voice trembled, betraying the worry she tried to hide. I took the paper, my hands steady even as my chest tightened. The handwriting was childish but pointed, full of assumptions and half-truths. She doesn't even have a real dad. Do you really think he can love her like that? I could feel my jaw clench, the bitterness of anger mixing with the sting of humiliation. It wasn't the first time we'd faced judgment from the outside world, but it stung more now, hitting the tenderest part of our fragile recovery. I looked at her, my daughter, and saw the fear mirrored in her eyes. You saw this? I asked softly. She nodded, hugging herself tightly, trying to absorb the impact of the words. I don't know what to think. Everyone's looking at me differently now. And maybe they're right. Her words cut deeper than the note itself. I could feel the weight of every doubt, every insecurity pressing against her small frame. I moved closer, crouching beside her, letting her feel my presence without forcing it. Listen to me, I said, my voice calm but unwavering. What's written on that paper doesn't define us. It doesn't define you. It doesn't define our family. We define ourselves. And love is what makes a family. Not papers, not biology, not anyone else's opinion. Her mother stepped closer, placing a hand on her shoulder. We can't control what people say, but we can control how we respond. Together, tears slipped down my daughter's cheeks as she pressed her face into her hands. But it hurts, she admitted, her voice muffled. It hurts so much. I feel different, like I don't belong. I reached over, brushing her hair back gently. You belong, I said firmly. Here, with me, with your mom. You've always belonged. And no one, no rumor, no note, no whisper, can take that away. She sniffled, lifting her face slightly. There was a flicker of defiance, a spark of the girl I knew. But what if people keep saying things? What if they never stop? I took a deep breath, letting the weight of my words settle. Then we face it together. We talk, we stand, we survive. And you learn that their words don't matter unless you let them matter. You are stronger than you know. Her mother knelt beside us, wrapping an arm around both of us. We're here, she said softly. Always. And that's the truth that counts. For the first time that morning, my daughter let herself relax, just slightly, leaning into the embrace. It was fragile, yes, like a flower in the wind, but it was there. And in that moment, I felt something shift. Not a solution, not a victory, but the first step toward resilience. I knew the road ahead would still be full of challenges. People would whisper, questions would arise, and she would have to face the reality of being different, of being judged. But I also knew this: we had survived worse together. And this note, this external pressure, was nothing we couldn't handle as a family. We stayed like that for a long moment, the three of us bound together not by blood, not by circumstance, but by choice, by love, and by the quiet, stubborn refusal to let the world dictate our worth. Outside, the wind rattled the windows, carrying with it the faint scent of autumn leaves, and I realized something vital. Storms would come, but we had learned how to weather them, and that, more than anything, would be our strength. The weekend arrived like a fragile promise. Sunlight streaming weakly through the blinds, warming the house just enough to make the air feel alive again. I was in the kitchen, sipping a fresh cup of coffee, the bitter warmth grounding me, when I noticed my daughter at the dining table, sketchbook open, pencil moving furiously across the page. She didn't look up when I entered, but I sensed her focus had a different quality this time, a quiet intensity, a channeling of emotions instead of bottling them. Her mother hovered nearby, folding laundry silently, occasionally glancing at us with a soft, tentative smile. The atmosphere was calmer than it had been in days, though the fragile tension was still there, like a thin thread holding everything together. I pulled a chair up beside my daughter and rested an elbow on the table. "Looks like you're working on something important," I said gently. She didn't answer right away. Her hand paused for a moment, hovering above the page, and then she muttered, "It's kind of a story about a dad." I felt a flicker of hope, mixed with apprehension. A dad, huh? What kind of dad? She glanced at me, her eyes uncertain but bold, like she was testing the water. A dad who sticks around, no matter what, even when everything's hard, even when people say things, even when he's not perfect. My chest tightened. Every word felt like both a challenge and a gift, a tiny bridge being built across the gap between hurt and trust. I reached over, placing my hand on hers for a brief, grounding touch. "I like that, Dad," I said softly. "Sounds like a good one." A small smile flickered on her face, tentative, but real. She returned to her sketching, but this time I noticed a lighter quality in her movements. There was no rush, no tension, just expression, a quiet assertion of her feelings. Later, we decided to go for a walk. The air was crisp with the faint scent of falling leaves, a reminder that even when things change, life moves forward. She walked beside me, backpack slung loosely over her shoulder, shoulders less tense than they had been all week. We passed a group of kids from her school. A few glanced our way, whispering under their breath. Normally, she would have stiffened, ready to retreat into herself. This time she kept walking, head high, her pace steady. She glanced at me briefly, a small, almost imperceptible nod, and I understood. She was testing trust in the world, relying on the support we had rebuilt together. "Today was okay," she said quietly, kicking at a fallen leaf. I didn't feel like running away." I smiled, feeling a surge of pride and relief. "That's progress," I said. "Every day like this counts, even the small ones. You're stronger than you realize." She nodded, and for a moment, the silence between us wasn't uncomfortable. It was a shared understanding. The bond we had fought so hard to protect was slowly solidifying, shaped not by words alone, but by presence, patience, and resilience. By the time we returned home, the sky was painted with the soft gold of late afternoon. My daughter sat on the porch steps, drawing patterns in the dirt with a stick. I stood behind her, hands in pockets, watching. She looked up, eyes bright, and said, "I think maybe things can get better." I felt a lump in my throat. "They will," I said softly. "Step by step, together." Her mother joined us, sitting on the other side, and for the first time in days, the three of us sat together in quiet solidarity. No lectures, no arguments, just the simple presence of family, a reminder that bonds can survive even when tested by the hardest truths. I knew the journey ahead was far from over. There would be challenges, doubts, and moments of fear. But today had shown me something vital. Healing was possible. Trust could be rebuilt. Love could persist, even in the face of revelations meant to shatter it. And in that moment, as the wind rustled the trees and the smell of earth and leaves filled the air, I allowed myself to believe, not just in survival, but in triumph, that no matter what storms came, we would face them together. Because love, as imperfect as it might be, was always stronger than fear. Monday arrived with the oppressive weight of routine, but also the faint tension of anticipation. My daughter had been quieter than usual, the small victories of the weekend giving way to an undercurrent of anxiety. I could feel it radiating off her as we sat in the kitchen, breakfast untouched, the smell of toast and eggs hanging faintly in the air. Her mother hovered nearby, clearing dishes from the counter with exaggerated calm, as if her nervous energy could somehow stabilize the entire room. I could see the tension in her jaw, the way her eyes flicked repeatedly toward my daughter, silently reminding me that this wasn't just about my relationship with her. It was about the family as a whole. "Are you ready for school?" I asked softly, keeping my voice low so it wouldn't add to the storm brewing just beneath the surface. She shrugged, eyes downcast, fiddling with the edge of her napkin. "I guess." The moment was fragile, like a soap bubble threatening to pop with the slightest movement. I didn't want to force her, but I knew we couldn't avoid the world outside our home. That world didn't pause for our struggles, and today, the world had an extra layer of tension waiting. Her mother and I exchanged a glance. We both knew who would be waiting at the school gate. My sister-in-law. She was well-meaning but sharp, always quick with a comment, always ready to measure our parenting in ways that left no room for nuance. We drove in silence, the car filled with the faint hum of the engine and the distant murmur of morning traffic. The air carried the scent of damp asphalt, the crispness of fall, and the subtle hint of my daughter's shampoo. Every sense was heightened, aware of the unspoken tension that would greet us. When we arrived at school, my sister-in-law was leaning against the fence, arms crossed, lips pressed into a thin line. She spotted us immediately and straightened, the practiced smile that hid judgment flickering briefly before settling into a facade. "Morning," she said, her tone deceptively casual. "I see we're finally all together." I nodded, keeping my composure. "Morning, we're just dropping her off." She turned her gaze to my daughter, eyes narrowing slightly. "You're looking different these days. You've grown up so fast. Must be tough having changes at home, huh?" I felt a flicker of protective anger, but I kept my tone measured. "She's handling things well, and we're working on it together." My daughter stiffened, the old reflex of retreat visible in her posture. I reached over, giving her hand a gentle squeeze, a silent reassurance that she wasn't alone. She lifted her chin, glancing at her aunt with a mixture of fear and defiance. "I'm fine," she said quietly but firmly. "We're fine." My sister-in-law's smile faltered slightly, caught off guard by the confidence in her niece's voice. "Well, I hope so," she said, her tone carrying an edge I couldn't ignore. "I just worry. You know how kids can be, and the neighborhood talks." My daughter's hand tightened on mine. I could feel her fear and anger mingling, a storm barely contained. I gave her a calm look, encouraging her without words. "Let's go," I said softly, opening the car door for her. "We've got this. Together." She climbed out, backpack on, and I watched as she walked toward the school gate, head held a little higher than before, shoulders less tense. The whispered comments from her classmates were still there, the curious glances, the questions unasked but palpable, but she was walking through them, not away from them. I stayed in the car a moment longer, letting the sight of her moving forward settle in. My sister-in-law lingered at the gate, the edge of judgment still there, but I could see the faintest hint of respect in her eyes. "See?" I said to my daughter quietly as we drove away. "You're stronger than you think, and you don't have to face it alone. Not ever." Her mother exhaled softly beside me, the tension in her body easing just a fraction. "She's doing well," she whispered. I nodded, feeling the weight of the morning, the subtle victories of resilience and courage. The road ahead was still filled with challenges, external pressures, and misunderstandings, but for the first time, it felt like we could face them, not as victims of circumstance, but as a family, standing together against the world. And I knew that no note, no whisper, no judgment could undo the bond we were slowly rebuilding, step by step, day by day. The next day, the house buzzed with a tense energy I could feel in my chest. My daughter was unusually quiet at breakfast, poking at her eggs, staring out the window. Her mother and I exchanged a glance, both of us knowing something was brewing beneath the surface. The way she had held herself at school yesterday, head high, shoulders steady, was only part of the story. She still carried the weight of doubts, whispers, and judgment, and today, I sensed, she was ready to face them head-on. After breakfast, I followed her to the car. She didn't speak, just slid into the seat, backpack on, eyes fixed on the passing streets. I could smell the faint scent of her hair conditioner, mingling with the crisp autumn air. My hand rested lightly on hers as I started the engine, a small reassurance that I was there, steady and unshakable. "You've got this," I said quietly. "Whatever happens today, you're not alone." She didn't answer, but her grip on my hand tightened for a brief moment. That was enough. When we arrived at school, I could see the usual clusters of students, the whispers, the sideways glances. But today, something was different. She paused at the gate, took a deep breath, and stepped forward with a deliberate calm, meeting the eyes of her classmates instead of looking down. The shift was subtle, but I saw it. The small spark of courage that comes from deciding to face fear rather than run from it. She walked toward a group of girls who had been teasing her last week. The same ones who had passed judgment, whispered about not having a real dad, and made her feel small. My heart thudded in my chest, the tension nearly unbearable. I watched as she stopped in front of them, backpack slung over one shoulder, and held her gaze steadily. "I don't care what you think," she said, her voice quiet but firm. "My family is real. My dad is real, and I'm proud of them." The girls froze, clearly taken aback by the calm authority in her tone. A few murmurs rose, but she didn't waver. She looked around, head held high, and walked confidently toward her first class, leaving the cluster speechless. I leaned back against the car, exhaling a breath I didn't realize I'd been holding. My daughter had taken a risk, facing judgment head-on, and she had done it with courage I hadn't fully expected. The pride that surged through me was tempered by the lingering knowledge that the world wouldn't always be this forgiving. But today, she had claimed her ground, and that mattered. After school, she climbed into the car, her backpack heavier, but her posture unbroken. They stared," she admitted, a small smile tugging at the corners of her mouth. "But I didn't care. I told them." I reached over, giving her shoulder a gentle squeeze. "I saw. That was brave. That was you taking control." Her mother smiled from the passenger seat, eyes glistening. "You're growing so fast," she said softly, "and stronger than we realized." We drove home in relative quiet, the hum of the engine blending with the distant sounds of the city. The air smelled faintly of rain from the morning, cool and fresh, carrying with it a sense of renewal. My daughter leaned back in her seat, breathing evenly, her small victory settling in her chest like a new armor. When we got home, she went to her room, returning with her sketchbook in hand. "I drew it," she said, showing us a picture of our family, standing together, strong and unbroken despite the storm around us. The lines weren't perfect, but the image radiated determination and love. I felt tears prick at my eyes. "It's beautiful," I said. "Just like us." Her mother reached over, brushing a strand of hair from her face. "We survived," she whispered, "and we're stronger for it." In that moment, I realized that the turning point had arrived, not because of forgiveness or a single breakthrough, but because my daughter had chosen to assert herself, to claim her family, and to face the world with courage. The road ahead would still have obstacles, still have judgment and doubt, but she had taken the first steps toward resilience and self-assurance. And for the first time in weeks, I felt a quiet certainty. We were no longer just surviving. We were building something stronger, something lasting. That evening, the house felt unusually quiet, the kind of quiet that wasn't tense or fearful, but full of possibility. The faint aroma of a simmering dinner filled the kitchen, roast chicken with herbs, the subtle warmth of garlic and rosemary blending with the comforting smell of freshly baked bread. I sat at the table, nursing a cup of tea, listening to the soft hum of the refrigerator and the occasional creak of the floorboards. My daughter was nearby, sprawled on the living room rug with her sketchbook, and her mother moved about, chopping vegetables with a gentle rhythm that seemed to bring calm to the space. I watched my daughter as she drew, the pencil moving in deliberate, confident strokes across the paper. Her earlier school victories had left her quieter today, contemplative, her focus absolute. The faint smell of pencil shavings mingled with her hair, and I noticed how the warm light from the lamp glinted off her eyes as she leaned close to her work. She seemed smaller, yet somehow larger than the girl I had woken to just 2 weeks ago. The girl whose voice had cracked under the weight of betrayal and confusion. I cleared my throat softly and she looked up at me. "Working on something?" I asked, keeping my tone gentle. She shrugged. "Yeah, it's a picture of us." Her voice was quiet, but there was an edge of pride there, like she had finally decided to own something that had felt broken. I nodded, smiling. "Can I see?" She hesitated, then turned the sketchbook toward me. The drawing was simple but striking. 3 figures standing side by side, connected by a single line that looped around them like a ribbon. The expressions were exaggerated, cartoonish, but the intent was clear. They were strong, united, and unbroken despite the chaotic swirls and jagged lines surrounding them. The house, the sun, and even faint shadowy figures in the background seemed to tell a story of challenges and outsiders. I felt a lump rise in my throat. "This is incredible," I said softly. "It really captures us." Her mother came over, placing a gentle hand on her shoulder. "It's perfect," she said, "just like our family." A moment of silence passed. It wasn't awkward. It was heavy with understanding. My daughter's eyes met mine, and I could see the vulnerability still lingering there, the remnants of fear, the ghosts of earlier doubts, but they were tempered now by courage. She had begun to rebuild her trust in us, step by step, and in doing so, she had begun to trust herself. I leaned back in my chair, letting the warmth of the tea seep into my hands. "You know," I said, voice low, "sometimes families aren't about blood. They're about the people who show up, who fight for each other, who stick together when the world tries to tear them apart. And you've been part of that fight every single day." Her lips trembled, and I saw a flicker of tears. She didn't hide them this time. She just let them come, small and steady, as if acknowledging the weight she'd carried and the courage it had taken to let it go. "I guess," she said quietly, her voice catching, "I guess I get it now. That family isn't just about what other people say. It's about what we do for each other." I reached over, brushing a loose strand of hair from her face. "Exactly," I said. "It's about presence. It's about love. It's about showing up, even when it's hard, even when it hurts, even when nobody else believes in you." Her mother knelt beside her, enveloping her in a hug. "And we will always show up," she said. "Always." For a long moment we sat together, a single, fragile unit in a house that had weathered storms both internal and external. The kitchen smelled of warmth and life, the faint murmur of the city outside a distant echo, irrelevant to the bond we were holding. We didn't need words for every thought. Presence was enough. Understanding was enough. Love, in its simplest form, was enough. Finally, my daughter exhaled, a soft, shaky sound that seemed to release some of the tension she had been holding. I think I can do this," she said. "I think I can face all of it now. With you guys." I smiled, feeling a warmth bloom in my chest that had little to do with the tea. "That's all we need," I said. "Step by step, day by day. We take it together." Her mother nodded, her eyes shining. "And nothing can break that," she whispered. We stayed like that for a while longer, three of us in quiet solidarity, the world outside fading into irrelevance. The storm had not disappeared completely, but the foundation had been rebuilt, brick by brick, moment by moment. And in that quiet evening, I understood something crucial. Love wasn't just about surviving. It was about thriving together, even in the face of every challenge. And for the first time in a long while, I felt that we weren't just surviving anymore. We were beginning to live. Saturday morning arrived with a crisp chill in the air, the faint scent of wet leaves and early frost drifting through the open windows. The city was already stirring, the distant hum of traffic, and the occasional shout of kids playing outside carrying faintly into our home. Today wasn't just any day. It was the school's annual community fair, a place where families, neighbors, and students mingled, celebrated, and inevitably observed. For my daughter, it was another test of her growing confidence and trust in us. She was unusually quiet at breakfast, picking at her pancakes while her mother and I tried to keep the atmosphere calm. The faint aroma of syrup and eggs mixed with the lingering scent of her shampoo and the crisp air seeping through the window. I noticed her small hand tremble slightly as she poured orange juice, the motion subtle but telling. I knew she was anticipating the whispers, the curious stares, and maybe even the teasing that often came when others questioned her family. "You ready for today?" I asked, keeping my voice gentle but steady. She shrugged, eyes downcast. "I guess, I don't want people asking too many questions." "I know," I said, reaching over to squeeze her hand lightly. "But whatever happens, we face it together. No one can make you feel less than you are." Her mother smiled softly. "And you've already proven how strong you are. Today's just another step." We arrived at the fair, the air alive with laughter, music, and the scent of fried foods. The bright colors of booths and banners, the chatter of kids, and the occasional bark of a dog created a chaotic backdrop. But I could feel the tension in my daughter's shoulders, the small tremor of uncertainty she was trying to suppress. I stayed close, walking beside her, offering silent reassurance through presence alone. Soon, a group of classmates approached, some of the same ones who had whispered and judged her in the past. They hesitated as they noticed us, a mix of curiosity and caution in their expressions. My daughter's fingers twitched at her side, but she held her ground. One of the girls stepped forward. "Hey, so your dad, you guys, it's kind of different, right?" Her voice wavered, half teasing, half testing. My daughter squared her shoulders, meeting the gaze of the girl directly. "Yeah, it's different," she said calmly, her voice carrying a quiet authority that surprised even me. "But it doesn't make my dad any less my dad, and it doesn't make me less me. I'm proud of my family." I could see the shift immediately, the hesitation, the uncertainty on their faces. She wasn't shouting. She wasn't defensive. She wasn't running. She was asserting herself with calm confidence, testing her own courage, and showing everyone that she wasn't defined by their judgments. Her mother and I stood beside her, our silent support a pillar she could lean on. The world might try to shake her, but we were there to anchor her, to remind her that love and presence mattered more than rumors or whispers. For the rest of the fair, she moved through the crowds differently. She laughed more freely, spoke with peers, and even joined a small group in a game without hesitation. Every step, every small action, was a declaration. She belonged, she was confident, and she had chosen to trust us and herself. On the way home, the car smelled faintly of cotton candy and caramel from the fair, a sweet reminder of the day's victories. She leaned back, relaxed for the first time all morning, the tension in her shoulders gone, replaced by a quiet pride. "I think I did okay today," she admitted softly, glancing at me. "Even when they whispered, I didn't run." "You did more than okay," I said, voice full of warmth. "You stood tall. You faced it. That's courage, and I'm proud of you." Her mother reached over, placing a hand on her knee. "And you did it all on your own, with us right here. That's what makes you unstoppable." She smiled, small but real, and I felt a surge of relief and pride. Today had tested her, but she had passed, not perfectly, but bravely. And in that moment I knew the bond we had rebuilt wasn't fragile anymore. It was resilient, forged through storms, trials, and shared courage. As we pulled into the driveway, I realized something profound. We had weathered chaos, whispers, and doubt. We had faced external judgment, internal struggles, and the unknown. And through it all, we had grown. Not just surviving, but stronger, closer, and more certain of what really mattered. The sun dipped low, casting long shadows across the street, and for the first time in weeks, I felt something I hadn't felt in a long time. Quiet certainty. Whatever came next, we would face it together. Not as victims, not as fractured souls, but as a family unshakable, unbroken, and fiercely, brilliantly alive. The house was quiet that evening, the kind of silence that wasn't tense or heavy, but pregnant with possibility. My daughter sat on the living room floor, sketchbook open, pencil moving in long, deliberate strokes. Her mother leaned against the doorway, arms folded, a faint smile playing at her lips. I could feel it, the moment we'd been building toward, the fragile trust we'd been nurturing day by day. I sat down beside my daughter, careful not to crowd her. "What are you working on now?" I asked softly. She glanced up briefly, eyes bright but serious. "It's a picture of today, the fair." Her voice carried a quiet pride. "I wanted to capture how I felt, how we stood together." I leaned in, seeing the sketch. The three of us holding hands, framed by a swirl of people and tents, the chaos around us but the family at the center, unshaken. The details were simple, yet the message was clear: strength, unity, and resilience. "You've captured it perfectly," I said quietly. "That's exactly how it felt, like we were a team, like nothing could break us." She hesitated, pencil hovering over the page. Then, softly, she asked, "Mom, Dad, do you think we can really stay like this, even after everything?" I exchanged a glance with her mother. There was no hesitation in either of our answers. "Yes," her mother said firmly, "because we choose it, every day. We don't just survive, we fight, we stand together, and we love each other no matter what." I nodded, placing a hand on my daughter's shoulder. "That's right, we've faced a lot, and we still face challenges, but we do it together. And that's what makes us strong. You're part of this family, in every way that matters. And you always will be. Her lips trembled, but she smiled faintly. I think I understand now, she whispered. It's not about what other people say. It's about what we do for each other. And I want to keep being part of this. I want to trust all of you. Her mother's eyes glistened with unshed tears. That's all we've ever wanted, she said softly. I could feel the weight in my chest lift slightly. This was the moment we had been working toward, the point where the walls of fear and doubt she had built began to crumble. She wasn't just surviving the revelations anymore. She was embracing them, choosing love, trust, and resilience over anger and fear. We spent the evening together like that, 3 of us sharing stories, laughter, and small victories. The house smelled faintly of cinnamon from the evening tea her mother had prepared, and the soft hum of the city outside was a gentle reminder that the world continued, no matter the battles within these walls. Later, as we prepared for bed, my daughter paused in the hallway. "Dad, Mom, thank you," she said quietly, looking at each of us. "For staying, for fighting, for loving me." Her words hit harder than any argument, any confession, any tear. I reached out, ruffling her hair gently. "You don't have to thank us," I said. "We're your family. That's what family does." She smiled, small but radiant, and for the first time in weeks, I felt a sense of peace settle over the house. The storm that had erupted with a single sentence, "You're not my real dad," had been weathered, faced, and transformed. We had grown stronger, closer, and more certain of our bonds. As I tucked her into bed later, I lingered for a moment, listening to the steady rhythm of her breathing. The house was quiet, safe, and full of warmth. I knew challenges would come again, that the world outside would continue to test us, and that doubts might resurface. But for tonight, everything was right. And deep down, I understood the truth that had guided us through every trial. Love is stronger than fear. Trust is stronger than doubt. And family, real family, the kind that chooses to stand together, is unbreakable. I turned off the light, leaving the door slightly ajar. The room smelled faintly of lavender from her diffuser, and the shadows of the night stretched softly across the walls. I exhaled, a long, steady breath, and felt something I hadn't felt in weeks. Hope, not the fragile kind, but the kind that's grounded in presence, resilience, and the quiet certainty that, together, we could survive anything. And in that certainty, I knew we had not only survived, we had triumphed. The morning air was crisp, tinged with the faint scent of autumn leaves and the first hints of winter frost. The sun peeked through the clouds, casting golden streaks across the street. Today was the school's parent-student assembly, an event full of families, teachers, and peers. A perfect stage for small victories, for the quiet assertion of strength and trust. We arrived early, the parking lot buzzing with activity. Kids ran in groups, parents chatted with acquaintances, and teachers hurried past, clipboards and schedules in hand. My daughter stayed close, her small hand slipping into mine for reassurance. She didn't squeeze, but she didn't pull away either. That simple act spoke volumes. She was ready to face the world, and she knew we were behind her. Inside the auditorium, the smell of polished wood and faint disinfectant mingled with the scent of popcorn and school lunches. The noise was alive with chatter and footsteps, and I could see her scanning the room, measuring each face, each glance, each potential judgment. Her mother gave my hand a brief squeeze. "She's ready," she whispered. I nodded, my eyes on my daughter. "She's stronger than she knows." When the assembly began, she sat beside us, shoulders squared, chin lifted slightly, a small but visible aura of confidence enveloping her. She listened to announcements, applauded with her classmates, and even participated in a brief presentation, answering a teacher's question clearly and confidently. I could see the subtle surprise on some of the other parents' faces. This wasn't the same girl who had cowered under whispers or notes just weeks ago. Later, the principal called several students to the stage for recognition of community work and leadership. My daughter's name was among them. She froze for a heartbeat, eyes widening, but then she stood, straightened, and walked confidently to the stage. I could feel my chest tighten, a mix of pride and awe. She faced the audience, her small frame illuminated under the stage lights, and delivered her brief speech. "I want to thank my family," she said, voice steady, carrying just enough emotion to be sincere, but not trembling. "They've taught me that family is more than blood. It's love, trust, and showing up for each other no matter what. And that's what makes me strong." The applause was immediate and warm. Some students whispered to each other, their judgment softened by admiration. Parents turned, nodding at us, acknowledging the courage it took for her to speak so openly. My daughter stepped down from the stage, cheeks flushed, eyes bright, and slid back into her seat beside us. Her mother exhaled softly, a hand over her heart. "She did it," she whispered. I placed a hand on my daughter's shoulder, squeezing gently. "You did it," I said. "You faced everything. The whispers, the doubts, the fear, and you stood tall. That's real courage." She smiled faintly, leaning slightly into my touch. I think I finally get it," she admitted. "Family isn't about being perfect or what other people say. It's about being there. And I know you guys will always be there." I felt a lump in my throat. "Always," I said softly, "no matter what." Later that evening, back at home, the three of us sat together in the living room, sharing stories from the day, laughing quietly, basking in the warmth of our collective victory. The house smelled faintly of baked bread, the soft hum of the heater filling the corners, and for the first time in weeks, the world outside felt distant, irrelevant. My daughter curled up between us on the couch, her head resting on my shoulder. "I think I'm finally okay," she said, eyes closing, her voice soft. "You are okay," I said, brushing a strand of hair from her face. "And you're stronger than ever." Her mother wrapped an arm around both of us, completing the circle. "We've survived a lot," she said, "but we've done it together, and that makes all the difference." I looked at them, my daughter and the woman I loved, and felt an overwhelming surge of gratitude. The journey had been hard, stormy mornings, harsh words, whispers from outside, but we had endured. We had rebuilt trust, faced judgment, and emerged stronger. And in that quiet living room, with the glow of the lamp casting soft shadows, I realized the truth that had carried us through. Family isn't defined by blood, by circumstances, or by perfection. It's defined by love, by presence, by the unyielding commitment to stand together, no matter what. For the first time in weeks, I allowed myself to exhale fully, letting the relief, pride, and hope settle in. We had not only survived the storm, we had triumphed. And as my daughter drifted off to sleep, safe, loved, and unbroken, I knew that our bond, tested and tempered by fire, would endure, always.